Okay, guys, what we've got on the line right now is something that most Canadian fans have never dreamt about picking up on. But FIFA rankings, where do we stand right now? Where will we stand at the World Cup? Where will we be in December? All those answers are going to come through right now with DJ Knox. You know who DJ is. He's been on the channel many times. It's Mr. Stats. These stats are formidable. You will not get better even from FIFA. So hoist it in, enjoy it. It's going to be long, but if you're a numbers guy, get into what DJ Knox is bringing with the FIFA rankings, the permutations, and where Canada will be in December and quite possibly moving into the World Cup. DJ, thanks for coming on again, mate. It's an absolute pleasure. How you doing?
Yeah, great to be on, Stevie. Love your show. So happy to give some insights on the FIFA rankings. There's a lot of Canadian fans out there, who have suffered for decades of being ranked 123rd and 119th and everything. So, for the younger generations, maybe it's not quite as impactful, but for our generation, to see Canada, I think they're at 26 right now 26 is actually, getting into the World Cup quarterfinal possibility range. Not that you're by any means assured to get that far, but 26 in the world is not it's not an insignificant accomplishment for Canada, and I think they can probably maintain a top 25, between now and when the World Cup begins, But as I'll get into right now, climbing higher in the rankings gets increasingly more difficult and takes more time. You don't get to be a top 10 team just because you had a good year. It goes much deeper than that. So Canada climbing up from where they are isn't going to be easy. But let me share the screen here.
Get ready for this, people, because I tell you what, you're in for a real treat right now. Get ready for this.
I started, Steve, I didn't rank. I pulled off the FIFA website, the mid-range or the ranking that's in Canada's neighborhood. So I have a list here ranking 17 Switzerland all the way down to 43 Scotland. And you can see how the ranking works. It's all based on point accumulation. So you see Switzerland's at 1,648 points. And by the way, I'd have to pull up FIFA, but Spain or Argentina, they're probably up around 1,800 points or something like that. But anyway, we have Switzerland around 1,648 right now. Senegal 1,645, down to Canada 1,558. And then down to Scotland at 1485. So these are the countries that are in Canada's neighborhood of FIFA rankings. So what I did was I went through each of these countries' upcoming matches. So as an example, I looked at Switzerland. They're in UEFA World Cup qualifying coming up. They probably have 3 or 4 matches. And so I basically went into each of the matches that Switzerland has, and I evaluated each of their matches, how many points they would gain if they won the match, how many points they would gain or lose if they tie the match, how many points they gain or lose if they lose the match. And of course, they have multiple matches. So to frame it, you look at each one of these countries and you determine what is the maximum number of points they could gain in the upcoming windows, or what is the maximum number of points they could lose in the upcoming windows. Now, it's a little bit tricky because the system is dynamic, and so it gets evaluated after each win or loss. But for the most part, what I'm showing here is reasonably close to what would happen. So again, I'm going to pick Senegal. Senegal's sitting at 18th in the world, 1,645 points. They can gain 25 points by winning all of their matches. and they can lose a whopping 125 points if they lose all their matches. So why such a big spread? Well, if you look at Senegal, they're in CAF qualifying and they have a lot of easy matches coming up. They've got a lot of matches against low-ranked teams. And so sure, if you beat a low-ranked team, you don't get a lot of points. And if you lose to a low-ranked team, you lose a lot of points.
Doug, what's the
So,
difference between a qualifying game and a friendly game on the point system, just for people watching right now?
and that's a key question, is this window coming up in October and also November, UEFA, CAF, and CONCACAF are all in World Cup qualifying, and FIFA ranks that at 35, which means in a given match, there's 35 points to be distributed. Whereas a friendly, such as what Canada is in, is ranked 10. So any match that Canada plays as a friendly or any other country plays as a friendly, there's 10 points to be divvied up. And the 10 points isn't necessarily if you win, you get 10 points. It's a slightly different system where those 10 points are distributed depending on the relative ranks.
Right, yeah.
So if you're playing the best country in the world and you're ranked 200th, playing Spain and they win, they pretty well get 10 points. And Spain, they get about 7 or 8 points, and Spain loses 2 or 3. And that's how the system works. It all adds up to 10 points. But the key point that you're asking, Steve, is Canada's only in friendlies, and the rating is 10 points, whereas all these countries that are in World Cup qualifying, including all the upcoming CONCACAF, they're getting 35 weighting. So that's 3.5 times more.
Right.
And
so Canada can literally play 3 games to one of the other teams in competition, and it would equate to pretty much the same according to
if
results,
the competition
basically.
was approximately the same difference. So
Yeah.
what they do is they look at how far you're separated in the rankings. So yeah, so Panama is an example. If they're playing a team that is 10 ranks stronger than they are, and Canada's playing a team that's 10 ranks stronger, like Colombia, Panama's picking up 3.5 times the points. So that's an important point right now in where we are with the rankings. Is what's going to happen to Canada more depends on what everybody else does than what they do themselves, because
What?
of the
Say that again,
situation.
Dougie. Say that again so people really understood that statement, because it's a very important statement you're making there. Say that again, please, so people can
Yes.
understand that one more time, because that is
So
so
Canada
key.
has four friendlies, each weighted 10 points, whereas countries, I think sorry, I'd have to go back and look, but I think like a country in Africa, I think they have 5 still matches of qualifying,
Correct.
which is like 35 times 5 is 175 or
75.
something. So it's an enormous difference in ranking points coming up. And so Canada's in a situation where no matter what they do, their rank will depend on what the teams around them are doing.
Pretty sad to say, but that's the truth, yeah?
So it's actually quite tough for hosts to climb up rankings because they're not playing competitive matches. Of course, they played in the Gold Cup and they played in Nations League. Those were ranked higher. The key point is Canada's only got friendlies. The other point about how you move is if you're playing teams that are similarly ranked to you, then the distribution of points is not as dramatic as if they're not ranked similar to you. So Canada's matches are Australia and Ecuador, who are only essentially the same rank as Canada.
Pretty much, yeah.
Colombia is ranked about 10 higher or so, maybe a 12 higher. And Venezuela is, I think, ranked down around 50 or something. So I don't have the numbers in front of me. So essentially, if you're playing countries that are very similar to you, there's not as much points on the table.
Correct.
Okay, so let's get into this table. What I've done is for each country, so we'll take Senegal as an example. They're sitting 18th in the world at 1,645 points. They can gain approximately 25 points in these two windows, or they could lose 125 points. And again, it's because they're playing a lot of very weak African countries. But what that means is by the end of the year, Senegal could drop 125 points and get down to around 1520, or they could gain 25 points and go up to 1670. That's their reality. And each country here has their own realities all the way down. So this is looking at maximum and minimum performance of each country. So in the end, if you look at Canada, they can only go up or down about 20 points. And that's because their matches are more or less fairly even. They've got countries that they are playing that are similarly ranked. Colombia is a little better. Venezuela is a little worse. But on average, they're playing a fairly level field, and they're only friendlies. So they can only get about 5 points for a win. And they've got 4 matches, which means they can only go up about 20 points. Right. Or they can lose 4 matches and go down 20. So Canada is at 1558. They can go up to 1578 or down to 1538. Now, based on that, every country has the same range. So Senegal can go all the way up to 1670, down to 1520. So at the end of the 2 sessions, what I've done is all the teams that are highlighted in orange, those countries, in theory, meaning a perfect performance, could pass Canada.
Interesting.
So let me use one country as an example. Let's look at Egypt. So Egypt is at 1519. So they're like 39 points behind Canada right now, but they can pick up 38 points to move them up to 1557. Sorry, up to 1557. But Canada, who's at 1558, could drop to 1538. So Egypt can pass Canada. Now, well, whether that will happen or not is in the statistics of every match. But on the boundaries, all those teams in orange could pass Canada in these 2 windows for international play. Similarly, the countries ranked or shown in green are countries that Canada could actually catch and pass in a perfect world. So they are countries like Australia, Ecuador, Austria, Denmark, and Senegal. Note, though, they can't pass Korea, Iran, or Japan. Why? Because Japan is also not playing qualifiers. So you see, Japan can only go up or down about 20 points.
Right.
And Iran has only 1 game scheduled against Russia. So they can only go up 4 points. So the bottom line is Canada can't catch Iran or Japan. But in theory, they can catch Senegal if Senegal loses a bunch of matches against low-ranked teams. And so this table gives you an idea of the movement. And there's a lot of movement here.
Just a question on that, Doug. Talking Iran in 21st right now, 1 match has been scheduled. Maybe they schedule more, maybe not. But would you say by scheduling 1 match and working the statistics, it stops people climbing above you and keeps you higher in the rankings? What does that seem like?
Yeah, so some of the teams, some of the federations are very aware of this. As you know, the World Cup draw, everyone who qualifies gets to put in, pot 1, 2, 3, or 4. And believe me, everyone is very focused on what pot they're going to be in, other than Canada in the last World Cup really dropped the ball. They could have been in pot C, and Herdman and company roll into where was it? Costa Rica and Panama, I think, at the end of their World Cup qualifying, and they lost both matches, and that knocked them down into pot D. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. No, you're right. So Morocco, as an example, if you look at the world rankings, I think Morocco is somewhere around 11th, and they have been playing. If you look at their match loading rate, they're playing tons of matches because they are trying to scratch their way from like 11th in the world to 9th, because the top 9 teams are going to get placed into bowl one, along with Mexico, US, and Canada. So if you take a look at Morocco, they are desperately trying to claw every point they can get and try to get up into the top 9, but I don't think they'll do it. But
Probably
to your
not,
point,
no.
Steve, to your point is, you can try to manipulate your position a little bit based on who you're playing. Like if you really want to climb and you don't mind risking falling, go for a big name team to beat. But unfortunately, FIFA is quite wise to this. So that's why friendlies are only ranked 10 points and the World Cup qualifiers are ranked 35. They're on to this, right? So it's
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
yeah, you go and play all the friendlies you want and win
Yep,
them all, but we're not rewarding you in the same way as teams who are winning competitive matches in World Cup qualifying.
correct.
Okay, so what this means is if all these oranges and greens move in different directions, Canada can actually, in theory, climb as high as 21st in the world. And in theory, they could fall as far as 35th in the world. So they have 5 spots to gain, 9 spots to lose.
That's a big window, hey? All based on results as well.
And all based on what? How many teams do I have? I have probably 20 teams here playing on average 3 or 4 matches. So you're talking like 60, 70 matches. I mean, it's a very complicated scenario, but that's the bottom line: is Canada's going to be somewhere between 21st and 35th. I might get one position wrong there if you get into all the details. So that's the first conclusion: is Canada's playing with quite a big window. Why? It's because everyone around them are in World Cup qualifiers that are heavily rated, including CONCACAF. Panama has, sorry, I'm not up on the latest CONCACAF, but I think they have how many more matches? 3 or 4?
4.
So those are big matches. They're all ranked or weighted 35 points. So, and Panama, as you can see, is only 4 positions below Canada right now. So Panama can pass Canada easily if they go on a winning tear. Okay, so that's point one. Is there's going to be movement around Canada more than their own movement itself? So going to be a lot of movement around them, from
So,
Senegal down to Algeria.
so just a hypothetical. We could win all 4 matches and still have teams pass us that are in the orange zone
Easily.
because they get a bigger share of the points because they're qualifying, which is 35, remember, people, and Canada's only making 10 points per match if it goes well.
Look at the teams directly under Canada. And again, it depends on how many matches they have to play. But some of these teams like Panama, as I said, they can go up 40 points.
Yeah.
Wales can go up 35 points. Sweden can go up 45 points. Egypt can go up 38 points. Algeria, 40 points. These are big moves for a couple of windows. Okay, moving on to point 2. And what I've done is I've done a statistical analysis of probabilities of Canada winning and losing or tying each of these matches. And I'm not going to share all the number crunching with you.
Correct.
But the bottom line is the most probable outcome for Canada, statistically, is 4 points. 4 points is four ties or one win and one tie and two losses. And I think, Stevie, I mean, what intuitively does that feel about right to you? If I was to say, what do you think Canada's going to do against those four teams? I think you would say, although you would say it's not likely that they tie all four, but in terms of the relative of their rankings, that's about where they're going to fall. You know, they're going to come out with about four ties or a win and a tie, or maybe a win and two ties. And so you can see here a win and two ties is 5 points. That's a 15% probability. 3 points, which is one win, or three ties, 11%, and so on. And you can see at the it's a bell curve. So at the edges, 0 points, only about a 2% probability.
Absolutely, yeah. Now
And
those numbers look really good, especially your 3 to 5 point situation, 11 to 15%.
yeah,
Absolutely on the money, Doug. I can see in those games possibly Canada fans might not like this. Two wins would be a pusher for me. I think a win, a draw, and maybe two losses. Per se, maybe a win and two losses, and maybe one draw. So 3 to 5 points, you're in there, Doug. You're in there.
in conclusion, I'm going to open up another table.
You're going to enjoy this one, people. I tell you.
And
Look at
here
those
we
numbers.
go. In conclusion, if Canada gets 0 points out of these two windows, statistically, they could drop to about 33rd in the world. On the other hand, if they manage to win all four, they could move up to about 24th in the world. So they have a lot more to lose than they have to win in this window. And it's just the nature of the fact that there's a lot of teams around them who have a lot more movement. The most statistical likely from the previous table is that they get somewhere between 3 and 6 points, which means they're going to be ranked somewhere between 27th and 30th. And if you want just one number, then statistically the most likely outcome for Canada will be 29th ranked in the world. So they're going to lose 3 rankings in this window based on a pure statistical analysis. Now, that
Amazing.
doesn't mean that
Amazing.
will happen, right? They could fall anywhere. Remember, I said anywhere from 21, which is so. I mean, I didn't calculate those kind of probabilities, but for them to get 21 in the world would probably be 1 in a million,
Yeah,
maybe more than
absolutely.
1 in a million.
Yeah.
And for them to fall as far as 35th in the world, also, 1 in a million type scenario. But here you are. The most likely is they're going to be 28th, 29th in the world after this window. But if they lose all their games, they could find themselves down around 32nd or 33rd.
And the
Now,
first
if they
two
get
matches,
lucky, if they're
yeah,
lucky, they could lose all their matches and still stay in the top 30. But lucky
interesting.
means what everyone else is doing, like if Panama isn't winning and other teams, Ukraine, Wales, all those teams, if they're not winning as much as they should, then maybe Canada kind of gets a bit lucky and doesn't drop very much. But look, those teams are all fighting for World Cup qualification. Ukraine, Wales, Panama, and some of the other teams in that area. So you can bet that they're not going to be losing all their matches.
Not for a minute of the day. I
They're
mean,
going to
when you
be
look at
winning.
the 12 points we could gather with 4 wins and we only go up 2 points, that will tell people how tight this all is. Yeah. I mean, we
Yeah.
can't really go much further higher with perfection over 4 matches. That's the October matches and that's the November matches before we finally get to December where they tell you exactly where you're going to rank. Yeah.
Yeah. So this analysis is for the end of the year. I could have done it after October and then reassess after November, but it's a lot of work. So I just decided to.
Yeah.
I looked at October, November as a single window.
Nice. Nice. It
So
really does let people know. I mean, that graph alone lets people see points on the board, positions on the board of FIFA's rankings. I mean, that's an absolute view that tells you everything.
so the last thing I want to talk about is how much FIFA or people beat up on the FIFA system. But I want to put some context to it.
Nice.
If you look at World Cup qualifying going into Qatar, where CONCACAF determined the top 8 teams, and they went in the octagon or whatever they called it, octagon, I think they
Octagon, yeah.
called it, and everyone played everyone home and away. Now that is a pretty good statistical engine for determining rankings. And in that particular case, Canada came out first, Mexico was second, I think US was third, Panama was fourth, from my memory. So the first comment about FIFA rankings is if you look at just one confederation and you look at how the teams are ranked, they're pretty good. I mean, relative, you could say, the gap between two teams versus another two maybe isn't perfect. But if you look at the overall ranking of CONCACAF, it's pretty accurate. Why? Because they're playing each other quite a lot. So
Yeah.
right now in CONCACAF, Mexico is uno, Costa Rica is
Cinco.
cinco. Yeah, I got to work on my
Muy
Spanish.
bien, señor.
And I think number 6 is either Honduras or Jamaica, probably Honduras and then Jamaica. So what people have to understand is FIFA rankings can't be perfect because you have 200 countries and most teams are not playing each other. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
Canada doesn't play anyone in Africa.
No.
Except for the recent Ivory Coast. I mean, that's the first time Canada's played an African team other than Morocco in the last World Cup. So how do you compare the two? So FIFA has a system. You get points for winning and losing who you're playing. And you can't blame the fact that African teams are winning and losing against African teams, and Canada is winning and losing against CONCACAF teams.
Yeah.
But when you try to rank them all together, there's going to be some imperfection in how you do that. So the truth is, we're going to see some interesting matches here. Despite the fact that Canada has never played Australia, at least not in a long time, from my memory, they're both ranked about the same in the world. We're going to see. I mean, is Canada and Australia
25 and Canada's 26.
So we're going to, it's only a friendly, of course, but, it's a good test to see, if Canada goes out and beats Australia 5-0, you could say, oh, these FIFA rankings are crap. But I highly doubt that's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And same with, Ecuador. Everyone might say, oh, Ecuador is much better than Canada. Well, maybe Ecuador and Canada should be separated by more than 2 rankings. But again, they're in different confederations, so you have to take that into consideration. So that's about it. FIFA does their best in trying to evaluate these rankings. It has a lot of memory to it. So the fact that Mexico is ahead of US right now is only by a little bit because Mexico has kind of owned the U.S. in the last 2 years. But 2 years before that, 5 years before that, U.S. was owning Mexico.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think the rankings are pretty good, but they're not perfect, and they can't be perfect.
Yeah, it's all about a slide rule, results, matches in each window. Nothing can be confirmed before the event. After the event, everybody slides and slots into slot, and you end up with what you've got. But Dougie, I tell you, that is an amazing talk through one of what I would believe is the most toughest thing for people to understand in world soccer is the rankings. Everybody's got an affinity about the rankings, but very few people understand it like you. I want to thank you for bringing that again. Dougie, DJ Knox, people, every time he comes on, he brings the top stats